Healing is an interesting journey. Sometimes we think we're doing really well. We feel like we're making progress. We've been reading the books, listening to the podcasts, praying, journaling, and doing the inner work. Then one conversation, one comment, unexpected situation, and suddenly we're emotional. I've been there. I don't know about you. Maybe we're angry. Maybe we're hurt. Maybe we shut down. Maybe we become defensive. Then later we ask ourselves, why did I react like that? Can I tell you something I wish someone would have told me years ago? And that is getting triggered doesn't automatically mean you're immature. It doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean all of your healing has disappeared. Okay? Sometimes getting triggered simply means you've discovered another place where healing is inviting you to grow. Welcome back to the Katrina Johnson Show. I'm your host, Katrina Johnson-Owens, and this is a safe space for women healing from childhood trauma and where we believe that information plus inspiration equals transformation. Why? Because healing is possible, growth is intentional, and every step forward matters. Today, we're talking about emotional triggers, not so we can avoid them, but so we can begin understanding what they're trying to teach us. Life is about learning, right? I'm a big time lifelong learner. I hope you are too, because I truly believe one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves is learning to respond to our emotions instead of being controlled by them. So let's dive in. What if your triggers aren't the problem? I want to ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that when two people can experience the exact same situation and have completely different reactions, one person hears constructive criticism and says, "Thank you, I'll work on that." Another person hears the exact same words and immediately feels rejected. Why? The big question is why? Because we don't all hear life through the same experiences. We hear life through our stories, we hear life through our wounds, and we hear life through our beliefs. That's why emotional triggers are so important to understand. A trigger isn't simply something that makes you emotional. Let's get that straight. A trigger is something that teaches or touches an emotional wound that already exists. Think about that for a moment. The situation didn't create the wound, okay? It simply revealed it. And I know that can be difficult to hear because most of us spend so much energy trying to avoid being triggered. But what if your trigger isn't your enemy? What if your trigger is information? What if it's pointing toward an area of your life that still deserves compassion, attention, and healing? That perspective changed everything for me. We often blame the moment. When something upsets us, or our first instinct is usually to focus on what just happened. They shouldn't have said that. Or we might say, they made me feel a certain way. We get in our feelings, right? They hurt me. They embarrassed me. All in our feelings is all about us and our feelings, right? Now, let me be clear. People absolutely have a responsibility for the way they treat others. This isn't about excusing hurtful behavior. In no way am I saying that. Here's what I've learned. Two things can be true at the same time. Someone may have behaved poorly and my emotional reaction may still be teaching me something about myself. That's where healing begins. Healing begins when we stop asking only, what did they do? I know we ask that question, but it's not just about what they did. How about asking the question, why did this affect me so deeply? That's something we don't ask, but why did this affect me so deeply? That question requires courage, but it also opens the door to transformation. Your brain is trying to do what? Protect you. That's what our brain does, tries to protect us. Here's something I wish every woman understood. Your brain is not trying to make your life difficult. It's trying to keep you safe, especially if you've experienced childhood trauma. As children, our brains learn patterns. They begin asking questions like, what do I need to do to avoid getting hurt? We've all been there. We want to protect our heart, right? What do I need to do to feel accepted? What do I need to do to stay safe? Sometimes the answer becomes simply to stay quiet. Don't trust people. Don't make mistakes. Have you experienced any of those? Maybe always make everyone happy. Never let anyone see you struggling. I can relate to several of those. And those strategies may have helped me survive or you survived, right? But here's the challenge. What protected you then may be limiting you now. Your brain keeps using yesterday's survival strategies in today's relationships. And before you know it, you're reacting to today's situation through yesterday's pain. Now, I want to just dive in a little bit deeper here by asking you something. When was the last time you became emotional? And instead of judging yourself, think about that. Most of us don't do that. We become frustrated with ourselves. We do that really quickly too. We say things like, why am I like this? So we just start questioning ourselves, right? I should be over this by now. Who said? I can't believe I reacted that way. Why not, right? If you haven't worked through that. But what if, instead of criticizing yourself, what if you simply became curious? Children are very curious. And sometimes we need to practice curiosity, right? What if you asked, what is this reaction trying to tell me? That's a very different conversation because curiosity creates space for healing. Shame keeps us stuck and we don't want to stay stuck. I've learned that healing isn't about pretending we don't have emotional reactions. It's about becoming students of our own emotional lives. Instead of fearing our emotions, we begin learning from them. And that's the key. Sometimes we're reacting to yesterday. One of the biggest breakthroughs I had in my own personal journey was realizing that sometimes I wasn't reacting to what was happening in front of me. I was actually reacting to what the situation reminded me of. Maybe you've experienced that too. If you think that relates to you or you can resonate with that, drop a little comment in the or drop a note in the comment and let me know. Someone doesn't return your phone call, you get upset with that, right? Logically, they could simply be busy. But emotionally, you begin wondering if you've done something wrong. So there we go, self-criticizing. Someone offers constructive feedback. Instead of hearing an opportunity to grow, you hear criticism. Someone disagrees with you. And what happens? Instead of simply seeing a difference of opinion, you feel rejected. So does that mean you're weak? That's the question now. Does it mean you're weak? Absolutely not. It means your mind connected today's experience with an old emotional memory. And here's the beautiful news. Connections can be changed. They can definitely be changed. New patterns can be learned. Healing is possible. It's always possible. That's why I love teaching growth mindset alongside CBT principles, because healing isn't about staying trapped by yesterday's experiences. It's about learning healthier ways to respond today. And that, my friend, my dear sister, is where your freedom begins. So let's talk a little bit about your mind and thinking. Have you ever noticed how quickly a trigger happens? Sometimes your heart starts racing before you've even figured out why. That's usually the trigger that happens to me. Your shoulders tense. With some people, it may be that your breathing changes, or I hear a lot of people say their stomach tightens. We all have the different areas or ways that we relate or react in situations where we are triggered. Maybe your voice changes. Maybe you become quiet. Or maybe you become defensive. It's almost as if your body has already decided something is wrong before your mind has caught up. And here's one thing. Let me tell you what that is. It doesn't mean you're broken. Hear me again. It does not mean you're broken. It means your nervous system has learned to recognize certain situations as potential threats. For women who have experienced childhood trauma, emotional neglect, criticism, rejection, or instability, the nervous system can become highly alert. It's always asking one question. Am I safe? Sometimes the answer is based on today's reality. Other times, it's based on yesterday's experiences. That's why healing isn't just changing your thoughts. Healing also involves teaching your mind and body that not every difficult moment is dangerous. Not every disagreement is rejection. And hear me, not every correction is criticism. Also, not every disappointment is abandonment. These are things we've experienced. So learning that takes practice, and that's okay. I meant to say it is learning that takes practice, and that's okay. The space between our triggers and our responses is one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves, and that is by creating space. Because in that space, we get to choose. For years, I thought my emotions were in charge. I felt hurt. You may have felt the same way. I reacted. Believe me, I cried many tears by feeling hurt. I felt rejected. I withdrew. Whatever the case may be, you might be experiencing or have experienced the same. Maybe feeling misunderstood. I've been there. I felt I was being misunderstood, by the way, I always felt that it was my duty to make sure that the other person understood my point of view. But healing has taught me something different. My emotions are valuable. They tell me something, but they don't have to make my decisions, and they don't have to make yours either. You know what that is? That's freedom. So I want to teach you something that could possibly help you. It's called the pause method. It's a tool I want to share with you today. And with the pause method, step 1 is simple, but don't mistake simple for ineffective. Step 2 and 3 are simple as well. The whole pause effect is simple, okay? Some of the most life-changing tools are simple enough to remember when you need them the most. So let's start. Step 1, pause. Don't rush to respond. Don't fire off if somebody's texting you something, don't fire off that text to respond. Don't make the phone call, okay? Don't assume anything. Just pause. So that's step 1, pause. Because sometimes 30 seconds can save you 30 days of unnecessary emotional pain. Step 2, again, is something very simple. Breathe. Simply breathe. Take a slow, intentional breath. You're not trying to ignore your feelings. That's not what we're doing. You're reminding your body that in this moment, you're safe enough to slow down. That breath creates space between the trigger and your response. Now for step 3, which again is very simple, identify the emotion. You want to ask yourself, what am I actually feeling? Notice I didn't say to ask yourself what happened, but what am I actually feeling? Now, asking yourself what am I actually feeling will sometimes what looks like anger is actually hurt, okay? But asking yourself that question may feel the opposite. Instead of it feeling like frustration or irritation, the more accurately you can name the emotion, the better you'll understand what needs your attention. And then step 4, I might have said 3, but there's 4. Ask yourself one question. What story am I telling myself right now? You know, we constantly talk to ourselves, right? And I love this question because it interrupts automatic thinking. Maybe the story is they don't respect me, or they're going to leave. Maybe it's I've disappointed them. How about I'm not enough? Now ask yourself, is that the only possible explanation, or is my mind filling in the blanks based on past experiences? That question alone has the power to change how you respond from reaction to response. One of the goals of healing isn't to stop having emotions. It's to stop allowing every emotion to become a reaction. There's a difference. Reaction is automatic. Response is intentional. Reaction is driven by old patterns, whereas response is guided by growth. And what we want to do is constantly grow, right? Reaction says, I have to do something right now. Man, have I been there more times than I want to admit. But response says, I can slow down and choose wisely. The more you practice responding instead of reacting, the more emotionally free you become. I pray all the time for wisdom, and that I just gave you is wisdom. Your triggers are always teaching you something. And here's something I'd love for you to remember. Your triggers are not signs that you failed. They're invitations to pay attention. Every trigger asks a question. What still needs healing? While we're on the healing journey, what is still needing healing? What belief is showing up here? Could be asking, what fear is underneath this reaction? When you begin asking those questions, instead of criticizing yourself, healing becomes much more compassionate and much more effective. So I have something what I call the mastermind moment. So before we close, I want to leave you with today's mastermind moment. A trigger is not proof that you're broken. It's information. It's your mind and body pointing toward a place that's asking for healing. So the next time you find yourself emotionally activated, instead of asking that question of what's wrong with me, because there's nothing wrong with you, okay? Ask yourself this. What is this reaction trying to teach me? That one question can begin changing your relationship with your emotions. I also want to end with a healing reflection. Before you go, I want you to carry one question with you this week. Think about the last time you were triggered, not to relive the moment, okay? I want you to learn from it. Ask yourself. We're asking a lot of questions of ourselves, right? I mean, we talk to ourselves all the time. We're always thinking, overthinking, but I want you to ask yourself, what story was I telling myself in that moment? And then ask, is that story helping me heal or keeping me stuck? Sit with those questions, like I said, for this upcoming week. Journal about them. Pray about them. Whatever you need to do, I do want you to even maybe talk to someone you trust if you need to. Because healing doesn't begin when we have all the answers. Healing begins when we're willing to ask better questions. And I want to thank you right now for spending this time with me today on the Katrina Johnson Show. I hope today's conversation reminded you that emotional triggers don't make you weak. They make you human. If you would choose awareness over reaction, every time you choose curiosity over shame, and every time you choose growth over fear, you're becoming the woman you're meant to be. If this episode encouraged you, I invite you to subscribe, share it with another woman who may need to hear this message, and continue this journey with us here on the Katrina Johnson Show. And remember, healing is not becoming emotionless. Healing is learning how not to be controlled by your emotions. Our next episode, we will go into having a conversation that's very close to my heart. We'll explore why so many women struggle to recognize their value and how childhood experiences can shape our sense of self-worth. Join me next time for You Were Never Broken, Rebuilding Self-Worth After Childhood Trauma. And until next time, stay inspired.